Welcome everyone to this week's episode of Ant on Music. I'm your humble host, Ant. And this week we're going to take another trip in the time machine back to the 80s. And we're going to look at some more overlooked hair bands. Back when I did the first one of these, the first band I thought of, somehow I forgot to include in the video. Exactly. I don't know how the hell I did that either. But before we get into the music, I just want to remind everybody, please click like, drop a comment, tell me what you think of the video, tell me what you'd like to see. And of course, more than anything, subscribe. This is the colony of ants that I want to see grow and watch it really, get as big as it possibly can get. I love sharing my collection with everybody. So we're going to get into it. And we're going to start with the band that I forgot the first go-round. And that is Smashed Gladus. And the name of this album is Social Intercourse. This was their debut. They ended up putting out like one more several years later, but it didn't go anywhere. This album, it didn't gain any traction. It was released on Elektra in '88. And it boggles my mind that they weren't bigger. Sally Cato, the lead vocalist for the band, dynamite voice. She was like even more hard rock than Ann Wilson was. Really strong, great voice. Take a look at the album itself. It's just, basic black. It was on Elektra back in the day. Back of the album has the liner notes and a photo of the band, and there's Sally in the middle. And for me, this album was probably one of the better debuts that came out that year. And it just kind of, with a few people, it just went totally overlooked. It didn't do much of anything. For me, just to have the song Legs Up, it's worth the... But it also had some other great tracks like Licking Into Shape, 17 Going on Crazy, Eye of the Storm, and there's others. But this album, this was the one I forgot to include in the first one of these episodes I did about 80s hair bands. And if you get a chance to find this, whether you get it on CD or vinyl, or even if you just stream it just to hear it, pick this one up. Social Intercourse by Smashed Gladus. Sally passed away a couple of years back. So we'll never get anything more from them with Sally on vocals, which is a shame because she was a true star. She was a rock star in every sense of the word. Check this one out. One of my all-time favorites. Very underrated album. Next one we're going to look at. Okay, I have a mixture of albums and CDs. This was another fantastic debut. And that is Love Hate, Blackout in the Red Room, all right? And with this album, these guys are out of California, and, inside the album itself is really not much to look at. You've got the lyrics and liner notes, picture of the band, and that's basically it. But about the album itself, this was just a fantastic album, and it gave us one of rock and roll's true wild men in Jizzy Pearl. And Jiz is recorded with other bands as well, and he has his own YouTube channel. You should check it out. It's a lot of fun. Had the title track leading it off, Blackout in the Red Room. Rock Queen, Tumbleweed. What else do we have on this? Oh, Slutsy Tipsy, Hell California Population 4, which was the album, that was the title of their last album that they put out a few years back. And this is just a fantastic album. If you ever see this one out there, or Wasted in America, their second album, pick it up. Really well worth the listen. These guys were, once again, one of those bands that should have been bigger, should have been better, kind of got overlooked. We'll go back to one of the big albums. We'll go back to vinyl, you know. And this one, I absolutely love this album. All right, this is Jaffria. This is their first album, okay? And this was Craig Goldie and Greg Jaffria, David Glenn Isley, Chuck Wright, and Alan Krieger. All right, and if you're unfamiliar with them, kind of get, you know, kind of like vocally, almost like Steve Perry from Journey. You know, this was one of the bands when Angel kind of parted ways. Craig basically went on and formed this band along with Greg, and, you know, the rest is history. They put out a couple albums. There was this one and Silk and Steel. They had a fairly decent run as far as, you know, MTV goes back in the day. Remember when MTV used to play videos? There's the back of the jacket. And this is the inner sleeve. You know, one side's white, one side's black. It's got the liner notes and lyrics on there. Call to the Heart. That might ring some bells for you. That was the big song off of the album. Do Me Right's also another good song. Don't Tear Me Down, you know, and it's got other tracks on here as well. But, you know, Call to Your Heart was the big one. And the Silk and Steel album was actually really well done, very well produced as well. Let's go back to one of the little ones. Bullet Boys. Bullet Boys Sing. All right. This was another stunning debut album. You know, these guys came out of LA, and they're straight out of that Van Halen mode. Mark Torian, another guy who's been around in a bunch of bands, their lead vocalist. You know, he does his best David Lee Roth impersonation on this album, and it's not bad. It's actually quite good. This album, top to bottom, I remember playing the holy hell out of this album when it was released. You know, Smooth Up In You was the big single, if you remember that. it also had one of my favorite tracks on this was Ode to Joe, which is a song written for Aerosmith. Joe Perry and they mentioned Joe Perry and Steve Tyler in the lyrics. You also have Hard as a Rock, Shoot the Preacher Down, great song. For the Love of Money, which is a cover of an old R&B tune. Badlands, Hell on My Heels, and Crank Me Up. You know, it's got a couple other songs as well. But Bullet Boys' debut album, they put out a few. This was the debut, and this was just magic when it came out. You can hunt this down if you don't own it. Find it. It's worth it. Next up, all right, this was an RSD Black Friday release. This album first came out in '92. This is the second album from Jason Bieler and Company on Atlantic Records. This is Saigon Kick, The Lizard. And I remember when I was working in radio, we really played the holy hell out of this. This is the first time the album came out in the US on vinyl. I also have the original on CD. Here you go. Got a picture of the band and the liner notes. Also the lyrics. And when they put it out, they put it on this funky lizardy green vinyl, which is kind of neat. And this album just, it top to bottom kicked ass. First album was good. This is even better. Hostile Youth, Freedom, The God of 42nd Street, killer tune. My favorite on this album, Peppermint Tribe. The ballad, which you may have heard, Love Is On The Way, The Lizard, All I Want, Body Bags, and other tracks as well. Saigon Kick, The Lizard, definitely worth checking out. Their first 3 or 4 albums are really good. Definitely one of my favorite bands from this era. I feel they probably would have been bigger if it wasn't for the fact that they came out so late in the game. By the time they got to releasing records, people were moving away from, hair metal and stuff like this. But still, the 1-2 punch on here of Peppermint Tribe and Love Is On The Way back to back, just killer stuff. Definitely worth checking out. So Saigon Kick, The Lizard, awesome stuff. Go back to the little ones, all right? If you've been watching my videos, you know that I love Hanoi Rocks. So what does Jet Boy have to do with Hanoi Rocks? Simple. Their bass player, Sammy Yaffa, is the bass player at this point in time for Jet Boy. And their vocalist, Mickey Finn, with the mohawk, very cool dude. Got to see them live back in the day. They played at one of the clubs that I worked in, Streets in New Rochelle, New York. And they really brought the house down. They have the title track of this album, Feel the Shake. mean, that alone is worth the price of admission to see these guys. And they definitely had a little bit of a harder edge than, say, like like a Poison or something like that. They definitely had the glam elements that Hanoi Rocks always had, but more so than anything, they definitely had a little bit more of a dangerous vibe to them, along the lines of, like, say, Guns N' Roses or LA Guns, or bands of that nature. A little more rough and ready than just the same old that was going around. They were much more hard rock, heavy metal than the lightweight poser stuff. But this is another great debut. If you've never heard of them, check them out. Next thing, mentioned LA Guns, mentioned Guns N' Roses. This is one that came out a couple of years back, and this is The Roots of Guns N' Roses, Hollywood Rose. Before there was Guns N' Roses and before there was LA Guns, there were these guys, Hollywood Rose. And, the songs on this came out on Deadline Records back in 2022. It's Axl Rose, Izzy Stradlin, and then Chris Webber and Johnny Creese. So this is before they hit it big. Get to see some pictures of them live and in action right there before they became what they ended up being, which was truly monsters in the rock world at that point for the late 80s. Very cool early photographs of the band in action. And this is on a very funky vinyl. We'll take this out. So it's a split, black and white and red and black. And you can see that they have the logo there and the track listing. And some of these songs are actually kind of familiar. They're early versions of what ended up on the Guns N' Roses album. You have Shadow of Your Love and Reckless Life, which were on the Uzi Suicide label release of, what was the name of that album? It was the EP, Live Like an Effin' Suicide. I won't say the fucking word. And also Anything Goes. And that's, they also had Killing Time. And then on side B, what they did was Gilby Clarke remixed it, and they added guitar solos, overdub, on Shot of Your Love and Reckless Life by Tracy Guns. So you have there the roots of Guns N' Roses. And it's pretty neat. It's a nice artifact to have, basically. It shows you where they were and how they got to be what they became. So that's that. Hollywood Rose. Last thing I have to show you, believe it or not, what would a week be without me showing you a box set, all right? And this is kind of a rare one, all right? This one's called Hollywood Rocks, okay? It's got a faux leather exterior to it, and it's got a lot of stuff on it, all right? It basically breaks down, the LA scene from the early 80s all the way up through the early 90s. It's a 4-disc set. All right, has this great book in here with photos, liner notes about all the bands that are in here, that are featured, and some of them, people that were, went on to other bands. Comes with this neat little pin, or as they say over in Europe, a badge, and a faux laminate for an imaginary concert that never happened. So it's all backstage pass to nothing. And then you have the 4 discs. As you can tell there, you've got the Mean Man from Wasp right there. That is Mr. Chris Holmes. And this is the first disc in the set. You've got Hollywood Rose, which we already talked about. Mickey Rat, which was the forerunner of Rat. Plain Jane, which ended up going on to become Warrant. That's where Janie Lane and Steve Sweet came from. When they moved from Florida out to LA, they ended up becoming Plain Jane. So you've got Time Warp by them on here. Steeler, which had Yngwie Malmsteen and Ron Keel, or as I like to call him, Ron Key. Dokken, Wasp, Black and Blue, Quiet Riot, Armored Saint, Bitch, Warrant, and Exciter. All right, so that's disc 1 on this. The discs themselves, they're pretty basic to look at. Nothing spectacular. There's no line notes, just a sheet because you've got the book that encompasses everything. Then here, got Bobby Dahl of Poison, a very early pick of Bobby. All right, right there. Lots of makeup, but very different than what Bobby looked like when he was in Poison. And obviously it kicks off with Poison. Look at what the cat's right then. You got Lizzie Borden, another great band from that era. LA Guns with Paul Black. Prior to Phil Lewis, they had Phil Black. And they put out a CD several years back, probably like 15, 20, with the Paul Black version of LA Guns. Very different sounding than what you're used to. Striper, the Great Holy Rollers with To Hell with the Devil on this. Back in the day, they used to have their concerts and they'd throw out Bibles into the crowd. Great White, one of my favorites, Great White, On Your Knees with Mike Lardy and Audie Desbrow and the great Jack Russell on vocals. Harlow, Slut, LA Guns with Phil Lewis, so you get both versions of the band. Nitro, Faster Pussycat with Babylon, great song. Rough Cut, Tough, gotta love Tough. If you know anything about Stevie Rachel and Tough, they're a great band. Stevie has, for many years, has run the Metal Sludge website, which was always a lot of fun. Salty Dog, which we've talked about in the past. Let's see, what else? Rock City Angels and the Sea Hags, which I showed you that CD back on the last 80s special. I love the Sea Hags. And then right here, speaking of Ron Key, there he is, Ron Keel himself. And this is more the late 80s. This, you got Keel, Jailhouse, another great 80s band. London, Junkyard, which another great 80s band. Bang Tango, with their big songs on here. Someone Like You, that was a great tune. King Cobra, Tommy Gunn, Cats and Boots, another underrated band. XYZ and Damals. Damals, I remember back in my club days, I believe it was their bass player. He came into the club I worked in, and I was DJing. I had my brain on getting music out between imbibing, I guess is the best way to put it. And he came up to the DJ booth, and the DJ booth was high up. It's like you had to climb this vertical ladder to get into it, which was always a pain in the ass when you're carrying up here. But it kept people away, which was great when you didn't want to be bothered. And he came up, and he was like, "Yo, man, could you put on Damals?" And without looking, without thinking, without doing anything, I just kind of went, "Yeah, man, I don't play that crap here." And then I turned to look and saw it was the bass player for Damals. And he was like, "Ah." And I was like, "Oh, dude, I'm sorry." I ended up playing it. I felt bad. Final thing that I have here in this box set is the Disc 4, early 90s, Electric Angels, Jet Boy with Feel the Shake, Big Bang Babies, Saigon Saloon, Spiders and Snakes, Pretty Boy Floyd, another great band, Love Hate, Wish It Was Summer, and Fizzy Bangers. If you can come across this, you can check Discogs for it. You may want to check it out. It's definitely a great box set. It's a good way to get a listen to a whole bunch of stuff all in one spot. And it makes like for almost a great playlist. You just throw it on and let it fly, and it's fantastic. So that's the Hollywood Rocks box set. This came out in 2005 via Deadline Records. Kind of hard to come by now, but if you can get a hold of a copy, do yourself a favor, pick it up, especially obviously if you're into hair metal. It's definitely a good listen. So that's everything I have to share with you this week. Just wanted to inform you about what's coming up. So March is Women's History Month. So what I intend to do, hopefully I get around to doing it, is going to do an episode on the women who rock, because what is rock and roll without the women who rock? There's so many great rockers out there. And there's still some great music being produced by the ladies. And, they deserve their time. I mean, it's got so many fantastic women in rock and roll, past and present. So we're going to do an episode on that. Coming up, we're also going to have an episode entirely on Motley Crue. And also, I've got to do a big, mail haul, crate digging thing, because I have so many records that I've gotten probably in the past month. And I'll be honest with you, some of them I haven't had the time to listen to yet. So I'm going to give those a listen, and I'm going to, share them with you, and, get that cleaned up before we move on to the next set of stuff that's coming out. Getting ready for Record Store Day 2024. If you haven't seen the list on that, go check it out. There is some stuff on there that is really, it's going to be putting a hurting on my bank account, I'm sure. As always, thank you for stopping by, checking out my collection, listening to me yap and yap. Come back next week, subscribe, share. Thank you for stopping in. Love spending time with everybody. So, till next week, peace, one love, music. I'm out.